Green light's on.
Okay, this is not.
Oh, that's okay. I'm good there. I stopped her.
You said he's good.
Oh, you did that on purpose?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
And that green light is on.
Okay.
And I'm recording, so you are good to go.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rafael Valle, and I am the Dean of Students at Atlantic High School. And so today we're going to be looking at the impact of support facilitation on Algebra 1 as measured by BEST, or EOC, end of course achievement and of course exams. In 1975, the Education for All Handicapped Children set up the concept, they codified the concept of least restrictive environment. Right? Later on, when that law got changed in its name in 1990, it was reauthorized, and now that's what we call IDEA, or IDEA. So IDEA gives us this idea of one of the pillars of it is this least restrictive environment, and what Volusia County uses is we use support facilitation. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We'll go from there. Let's talk a little bit about my school. I'm at Atlantic High School. At Atlantic High School, we are 1,086 souls, and Erica has me beat because I am 13 minutes from my office to the beach. But we boast, in our little courtyard, we boast 40 palm trees. It is just beautiful when you go there. And so when I tell you that we have 1,086 souls, it's really a great group of young men and women, students that we have at Atlantic. 20% of those are SWDs, which is students with disabilities, right? But when we look at our study for Algebra 1, what we're looking at is a smaller group, right? So that Algebra 1 group is going to be about 145 students, 23% of them are students with disabilities. And then you'll see this kind of funny word over here, SWAD, right? Students without disabilities. It's just it was found in a lot of literature that I was reading. You see the breakdown here. I won't go through the entire breakdown, but white non-Hispanic is the majority. Then you have black non-Hispanic is at 22%. It kind of follows from there. So as we continue going, so where are we going from here? Why did I choose algebra, and what do we see? Well, I think if you look from left to right, you're going to look at the years going. You see a problem here. You know, we're at 16% achievement rate on Algebra 1. And this year we're at 37%, and it looked like we doubled it up here, and we went up, and then we just came back down. And this is this year's numbers, right? And so this was just a shock for us, very painful for all of us. And what's interesting is, and I think Danielle spoke about this, but one of my authors, Payne, which is interesting because that was one of your authors as well. I smiled at him. I just met Michael today. So just met him today. I smiled. We had a couple of the same authors. But one of my authors, Payne, talks about algebra being this gateway, that if you do not pass Algebra 1, algebra is a gateway towards health, finance, towards the life that you are going to live. And so if you don't pass Algebra 1, you will earn much less than you would if you did, right? And so we really have to focus on Algebra 1. I try to tell my kids all the time, it is by far the most useful class I've ever had, but this is our problem in a nutshell, right? We are not passing. Underneath it, BCS is Volusia County Schools. You see their pass rate, which is always higher than ours, and then you see the state of Florida as well. So the research questions that I looked at are, what is the impact of support facilitation on exceptional education, exceptional student education, Algebra 1, and what are some of the challenges that we see there? The literature review, the first thing is this older study. I know we tried to keep some newer studies, but this study by Deeker, my wife and I were going back and forth. Is it Diker? Is it Deeker? So by Deeker and Morosky is fantastic. It talks about that the lack of content knowledge is really difficult when it comes to having support facilitation, co-teaching, collaborative teaching models. Also that there's a cycle of conflict. And Deeker quotes this really great idea that in any relationship, there's going to be conflict, right? You're going to have this stage of forming, and then they're going to talk about storming and norming, right? And so you form the relationship. It's a little bit like a personal relationship. You have that honeymoon phase, then you find it out, then you become this really great collaborative pair in the classroom that can do so much. McTeague talks about identifying roles, that it's really important that when we work with other co-teachers that you must know your role. What is your place in this? And so you spoke about people coming into your classroom, but What is your role? What are you supposed to do when you're here? And then this idea of shared ownership, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. One of the more interesting parts of the literature that I read was Morales. Morales actually does not believe that support facilitation moves the needle. Morales is like, listen, support facilitation, these co-teaching plans that everybody has, does not move the needle when it comes to standardized education. And he talks a lot about these ideas that we all see the potential benefits, but we rarely realize those benefits. We rarely see them because of all of the obstacles that are out there. So that was a really great read. Going on, I think I've already spoken about Payne if he comes up here right now, where he talks about algebra being the gateway, so we'll continue from there. Schnars, in her writings, she talks about the idea that if you're going to have a great collaborative teacher, that teacher is going to suffer with their other responsibilities. So these support facilitators or these co-teachers, they have other things that they need to do because they're special education teachers. So if they're collaborating with you all day long and making sure that they're ready to co-teach and do something really great, they are forgoing their other responsibilities. And so Schnars talks about this idea of them being overwhelmed by too much collaboration going on. Lastly, for the review of the literature, I look at Thousand. He does a great job talking about this idea of structured coordination. So there's a lot of models when it comes to co-teaching models, but some models require way more structured coordination than others. Some models, okay, Dr. Touchton walks in here and she begins to teach. Well, I can go around and just, do a couple of things. But there's other models that really require a lot of coordination, and so much of what we do is not take that structured coordination in time. And so that would be really problematic. We used a mixed method. We looked at quantitative data from Algebra 1 Proficiency EOC, that's from the state. Volusia benchmark assessments, that's very specific to Volusia County. So we call those VBAs, that's how we'll be talking about that. And we got that from Volusia County Schools. VBAs is because you don't have progress monitoring in algebra and geometry at the high school level. Right? Progress monitoring is for the middle school levels. At the high school level, which is I think what Ted had mentioned, is like, hey, they don't support that, and so we have our own VBA system in Volusia County. We also did a survey for our qualitative data. I surveyed algebra teachers, the support facilitators, the math coach, and the ESC administrator, much in the same way. There were both Likert scale questions, there were open-ended questions. We kind of tried to look at it holistically. And hopefully all of that will come together. We won't spend too much time on this. It's a big slide. You already know that there are many different types of co-teaching strategies. And understand this, depending on which author you read, some people will call it co-teaching, collaborative teaching, support facilitation. And so what you'll notice down here is, I went ahead and even on this slide, I just put in two authors because they don't always say the exact same thing. So, but the basic ideas, complementary teacher, you've got a lead teacher and the second teacher is either paraphrasing, adding something, drawing a graph, right? There's quite a bit of coordination on that. When Thousand talks about some things having more coordination than others, complementary teaching would have that. One teach, one assist is what we see most often, which is a lead teacher with a support facilitator in our county kind of following around and doing some other things. Parallel teaching, there's a lot. You see that I put two words in here. There's a lot to parallel teaching. There's entire categories of parallel teaching. So what I chose here was small group instruction, which is one of the ideas of parallel teaching. Small group instruction, you break up your classroom into small groups and you kind of each take time doing that. Station teaching, alternative teaching, team teaching. Station teaching, they're moving around. Alternative teaching is great for remediation, right? And team teaching is by far the most coordinated. That's two teachers going right next to each other. Without a doubt, the best class I took was a honors college seminar one summer, two professors going at it. It was transformative, life-changing, best class I've ever had, bar none. But it takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. It was very small. They ran it once every couple of years, and so they go from there. Now, we're going to dig into this next slide quite a bit. So, what is the model at Atlantic High School? Right? So what do we use? And so I know there's a lot to look at, so follow me here. The top left is, what do teachers believe? Teachers believe, 66% of them believe, that what our model is one teach, they teach, you assist me. I run the show, you're my Robin. Right? You ask the support facilitators, they're like, no. We are parallel teaching. We do a small group model. But it doesn't just stop there. If you ask the administrator over ESE, the admin over ESE says, our model is definitely parallel teaching, small group instruction. You ask the math coach, oh no! Math coach says, hey, no. We have a lead teacher and an assist. So that is going to be a problem unto itself. Not knowing your roles is definitely a problem. Let's go through it a little bit. So stay with me through these VBAs. These Volusia benchmark assessments, they are quarterly for the first 2 quarters. The third one comes midway through the third quarter, so you can kind of get ready for the EOC. What we see on this is your highest achievement, we come up here, that's your students without disabilities. In the middle, you're going to have your students without disabilities. They're all supposed to be a type of teal, but that's your teal right here in the middle. So VBA 1, they were the highest, VBA 2 the highest, VBA 3 the highest. On the far left of each of the VBAs is going to be your students with disabilities. And the far right is that mixed number. I didn't really love how this comes out, which is kind of how they show it, so I tried to change this around a little bit. Now we have it, here's your students with disabilities, and that is by VBA. VBA 1, VBA 2, VBA 3, same thing. And it really actually goes with with what Michael said, that you do see kind of a downward trend. And one of the things that I would suggest from my research is part of it is the lack of knowledge by the support facilitators. As it becomes more difficult to teach that math, it's more difficult not just for the students, but for the support facilitators, not to get ahead of myself, but some of them are facilitating multiple different classrooms, so it's a lot for them to learn. These first 2, I apologize, that we saw were from, they were up there, were from 24-25. These 2 that we're going to look at are the current 25-26 school year data. Okay? And so, hot off the presses, right? So 25-26 data, we actually started a little bit lower than we did the previous year. We actually started a little bit lower than we did the previous year. We did very well in VBA number 2, where everybody rose, and then we came back down for VBA number 3. When we break it up and we look at it by subgroups, right, with our students with disabilities, over here on the left, we see where their numbers are. They actually went slightly higher from 21% in VBA 1 to 22% in VBA 3, to whereas our students without disabilities dropped from 1 to 3. They dropped about 4 points from 1 to 3. And I know it might seem like I'm not worried about the total number, but we are just trying to disaggregate that number altogether. So the total number is always going to be there, right? And so let's mix that data with the qualitative data, with what do teachers see and what do the admins see. And so here's what we see. Increased understanding. Every author I read said that support facilitation, collaborative teaching, co-teaching models has a world of benefits, right? The potential benefits are always out there. And so this is one of those benefits, right? You can have benefits from higher test scores to better behaviors to faster response times when kids have questions. And this one is increased understanding. Our teachers believe strongly that it's going to have 33% strongly believe, the rest agree that it's going to have better understanding. Our support facilitators, you got somebody down here who's like, I don't know about that. But there's general belief that there's better understanding from this. When we look at other benefits, reduced failure rates. Well, that should be a positive thing. If you have more teachers in the classroom, hopefully kids are not failing at the same levels. And so you'll notice that some of this is going to go actually against a little bit of the research that we saw. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The last thing, one of the other things, so these are some of the perceived benefits. The idea that you should have better grades, that you should have less failures, all that kind of stuff. But one of the challenges and obstacles that we see is this idea of a defined role. If you and I sit down and we decide that we're going to teach together, well, we need to define our roles. Who is going to do what part? And when we look at the top, we see that about 2/3 of the teachers, there was three teachers, there were 8 support facilitators that were involved in algebra. 2 of the teachers say, we really haven't defined this very well, right? And so support facilitators, look how different their perception is about their defined roles. And the administrators, the math coach and the administrator are like, sure, I'm sure they do that, right?
I saw the last 2 ones.
Yeah. So we see that there's some challenges there. Other challenges that we see, and so when I presented this to my admin, she was so disappointed, mixed in with anger. And here's why. How often did you or your support facilitator plan together? Why was she disappointed? Why was she upset? Because she works the master schedule to give them common planning. And so here's the issue. If you are not planning together, then you're not looking at those VBA scores. You're not remediating, you're not looking at the VBAs, you're not looking at the benchmarks to see where do these kids need remediation. It's the entire reason for the common planning. And so this kind of goes towards what Morales has said, which is support facilitation, co-teaching models do not always move the needle because they don't take advantage of what they have. Okay? So the last obstacle that we see, and if you're wondering, orange and red, yes, those colors are bad, is the lack of content knowledge. When you ask the support facilitators, how strongly do you feel about your content knowledge in algebra? One person feels pretty strong. The rest do not. The math coach does not feel strong about them, and neither does the administrator. So that becomes a very strong challenge, right? When we start looking at some of the results of what happened the last 2 years. The results of what happened the last 2 years, in 2025, we see that we have 150 students with a 42% overall pass rate, but when you go down to students with disabilities, there are 35 children, 26% pass rate. Very similar numbers, but remember, we went down from 25 to 26. So students with disabilities, there's 33 of them out of the 145, and our numbers on both sides went down about 5 points, right? From 42 to 37, from 26 to 21. And so what we're seeing is that there's a gap between the potential that we have with support facilitation and the performance, right? There's a potential performance gap that is huge. We are not realizing, right, our return, if you were an economist, the return on your investment is very poor. We need to have higher return on investment. And as a school, we want to do better. If we break down this number right here, the 2026 numbers, what we're going to notice is, and I try not to put a whole lot of words on there, so I'm going to just explain a little bit. Here's what we notice. How many students pass the course? Algebra 1 students. This is all kids mixed in together. About 65% of them are passing the class. A C or higher. About 43% of them, this is students without disabilities, are passing the Volusia benchmark assessment. The VBA is only being passed by about 43% of them. But look how much correlation there is, because this came up earlier, between the Volusia benchmark assessment and the EOC, the end of course exam. 43% pass rate on VBA number 3, 42% pass rate on the EOC. For Volusia County, for Atlantic High School, the VBA and the EOC completely correlated. Thank you. What do we see? We see a huge achievement gap for students without disabilities, 23%. Same idea when you look at it for students with disabilities. 65% pass the class, and it's actually a little bit higher that pass the class on the students with disabilities. 22% of them achieved a 3 or higher on the Volusia, the VBA, 21%. So you do see that This is not a class on the VBA versus EOC, but they definitely were aligned in our school. But you see a massive gap of 44%. So we're really not getting what we are paying for. We're not getting what our investment is. So when we go back to this slide over here, we need to, administration, math coaches, as a school, we need to decide on one specific way of doing things, right? To do it uniformly. And that was our suggestions when I met with admin. Hey, how are we going to do it? What are going to be our options? Currently, the two that we see the most at Atlantic High School is one teach, one assist. You see that in red, the same number that the same color the teachers had. And in orange, the parallel teaching small group. Where do we want to go? Speaking with our admins, we want to go definitely over here to this side specifically. Right? We want to have a small group model, and we'll judge it on a case-by-case basis. But uniformity will absolutely help. I was just at next steps, so I'm sure I missed something when I was supposed to say at next steps. So leadership lessons, increasing ROI. ROI is just return on investment. You got to increase your return on investment through fidelity in what? Number one, fidelity in collaborative planning. Number two, fidelity in checking in on that planning through small groups, or through PLCs. Admins have to go in and see, is this planning occurring? So we have to be faithful on that. We need to guard planning time for the support facilitators. Anytime there's an emergency, they are the substitute teachers. And so we need to absolutely guard that time. This is only a tangent of my AR. I read this wonderful piece about math coaches when I was looking at strategies for math coaches for support facilitation. And this really great article talks about how if a math coach is spending their time tutoring students, then they're not spending their time teaching the teachers. So when I sat down with my admin, I shared all of these things. She saw that completely. So we have a plan that we are looking to implement right now, coming up in this fall, where we will have content training for the support facilitators in algebra towards the end of the semesters, on the second half. But in the beginning, we are going to work on training and collaboration. How do you collaborate well? Emily Sims, one of the authors, says that you have to collaborate on every part, from sharpening your pencils to everything you do in the classroom. All classroom management should be collaborated on. If you have any questions for me, these are my references. The ones that I shared with you were fantastic. And so these are some of the other references that we have there. Any questions? We'll go ahead and give a thank you, and we'll go for that. So thank you to everybody, certainly everybody in my cohort whom I love to death, and they are also special to me. Just love you guys to death. You have been awesome. And along with that, hopefully that's going to go into my teachers, Dr. Gruber. My wife said I was not allowed to put little parentheses under my teachers because they have been therapists and psychologists, ER doctors. They have revived me. They have done all sorts of things. So I'm thankful for that. And also very, very thankful for my wife, who is just the love of my life. And she has made this possible, along with my children and my family. So, all right. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Questions?
I just have a comment. Love your